Good evening. It's very good to see everybody here again tonight. It's always fantastic to be here with you here at the Raleigh Church. We had a special treat at Rocky Mount this past weekend. We had your preacher came and spoke at our gospel meeting, Share the Sun, and Freeman did a wonderful job. Wonderful job. We've heard a lot of good things about that. The preacher who came the next night to speak actually used what Freeman talked about as a segue into his topic, and so that was very good. He did a great job. If you would bow with me in prayer. Lord God, our Father, we come before you now, and we want to give our praise and thanks to you. We ask that you be with us as we do what we're going to do tonight, that you'll be glorified in it, and that our brothers and sisters here and whoever sees this will be edified and given some tools to help them to live and walk in a spiritual way towards you, and to manage their mental health and to help others with theirs. Father, we make this prayer in the name of Jesus Christ, also asking tonight for your blessings, your mercies upon people in Florida, as well as in the western part of North Carolina. We make this prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Tonight we're going to do something fun and special, and I'm going to ask you to be doing it in the where you're sitting, and I will be asking in a minute for a volunteer to come up here with me to be doing that. I see some of you pointing at people, but so we're going to do that in just a moment. So we're learning to do spiritual judo. And we're going along with some of the scriptures that the Holy Spirit has given us. Then he used Paul to write some of this, and Solomon and others. As you remember our formula here, let's don't forget this, that there's an event or a circumstance, and when we experience that will cause a thought, an interpretation, a cognition, if you will, some kind of perception, an intuition, an imagination, and so forth. That cognition, that thought, will produce a feeling, or maybe a number of feelings. And that feeling will produce, since feelings are energy as well as monitors to what we're thinking, that feeling will produce behavior. You will do something with that feeling. Even if you just sit there and think you're doing nothing, your body will do something by creating or producing hormones and electrical currents in your body that will be doing something to your body. There will be an effect, and then there will be consequences or results to that behavior. So keep that in mind. I hope you're memorizing this. It's just a rule of thumb. This doesn't solve all problems. It doesn't answer everything there is in psychology by any means, but this is a way that we can conceptualize how God made our soul, our inner person, our inner man or woman to work. It's just the way it works. And so if you want to do something about a disturbing feeling or a disturbing behavior, there are two places that you can go. Number one, you can go to the thought. If you change the thought, you will change the feeling. Sometimes that changes immediately. Sometimes it takes time to change. Another place you can go, let's say you even have a feeling that you don't like, but or it might be a feeling you do like. For whatever reason you want to change the behavior that comes from it, then you have a gap in between the feeling and the behavior. And that is a place where we are responsible to choose our behavior, or we are responsible. You ever thought of that? So we're responsible. We have choices, and to just say I didn't have a choice, that's really incorrect. Usually, when we say that, we say it happened so fast. It's usually because we haven't been trained or haven't learned how to deal with that feeling, that situation in another way. So we just need to learn how to make better, healthy choices of the behaviors. We do not want to sit on and repress feelings. We want them to be expressed somehow as quickly as possible. Sometimes you might have to stuff it or repress it momentarily for safety purposes, but you want to find a place where you can express that feeling in a healthy way, in a godly way, at a relatively rapid time after that. So don't forget this. This is paramount to a lot of what we're doing. This is spiritual judo that we're going to be doing tonight. So we're right at the crux of this spiritual judo. This is the fulcrum. This is where we flip the big guy over our shoulder and land him on the ground. So modifying behavior. Modifying behavior by gardening. If you remember gardening, we have a gardening metaphor we're using here, and cultivating our hearts. So what we want to do is we want to identify the irrational thoughts or ideas that are in our minds, our cognitions, and we'll call these the weeds in the garden. We want to make a list of whatever negative, destructive self-talk that you may find yourself telling yourself day by day. Okay? And we talked about lights and moths and all this, and how your feelings are like moths going up to the lights, and if we don't deal with these, our feelings can become so powerful and overwhelming that we lose the ability, at least temporarily, to know what the thoughts are that are causing them. So what we want to do is we want to make a list of our negative self-talk. What do you hear yourself saying? Not just one-off things. What do you hear yourself saying over and over to yourself every day? And when you make that list, at the end of the day, ask the question, how many times did I tell myself this today? How many times did I tell myself you're a loser, nobody likes you, you'll never have a good job, life's just going to suck for you and you just might as well end it? How many times are we saying things like this to ourselves every day? This is going to give us a clue. And so the third thing we want to do when we're identifying the negative self-talk is not only to quantify it as to how many times we're saying it every day, and you don't have to be exact on this. You know, we may be thinking it sometimes and don't even realize it, but some people take a little notebook and they'll have the negative self-talk, I'm a loser or something, and every time during the day that thought comes across their mind, they'll put a little tick there, and then they'll count it up at the end of the day. And then you look at that over the course of a week or a month. How many times am I saying this a day? You kind of have an average of how many times a day you're saying that. So we don't only want to quantify it, but we kind of want to also look at the quality or the intensity of it. So we put it on a little Likert scale. You say something like 1 to 10. So 1 would mean, I believe this really just a little bit. 10 would be, this is gospel truth. I really am a loser, or I believe it. I should die. I am not worth living. Now, if I really believe that at a 10, we want to move that back down the scale. And as we do this, as we do what we're going to be talking about here in just a moment, of digging up the weeds and challenging them and planting in healthy thoughts, what will happen is you'll notice that you'll be saying these negative thoughts less, and also on the scale, you'll be believing them less. And if they're negative thoughts, we want to unhealthy negative thoughts, we want to get down to a 0. So learn how your feelings are caused by your thinking. And this is a hard one for a lot of us, because what we feel, that sometimes that's the first time we notice that something's wrong or something's a problem. Now, you have a lot of really positive, happy thoughts and feelings also, and those are important, and probably most of us are living focused on those for the most part. I'm not mentioning those as much because those aren't causing us the problems. I'm just going to look at the negative part because that's the part that's causing the problem. But learn how your feelings are causing the negative, learn how your feelings are caused by your negative thinking. or your positive thinking. Sometimes I'm walking around and I just notice I'm feeling joy. I'm feeling happy. Now, I like feeling happy. I like feeling joy. I like feeling peacefulness and a relaxed feeling or contentment. So I ask myself, what is it that I was just thinking about before I noticed this? Now, the same thing works with negative feelings as well. Okay, I feel I'm really getting angry right now, or I'm really sad. I'm really afraid. What is it that I was just thinking about before I started noticing myself having these feelings? So we're wanting to identify these feelings as best we can, and we want to point out the specific applicable, irrational, nonsensical ideas, the weeds that are causing the disturbance. Okay, is this thought a healthy thought? Is it a constructive thought? Before I go on, let me just say this, that just because a feeling is negative doesn't mean it's bad. It just means we don't like it. That's why we call it negative. God made every emotion you have. He put them there for a reason. There's a purpose for them. And so when we say negative feelings, please don't get the idea that I'm saying something's bad or wrong about that feeling. If you lose something, let's say somebody you love dies and you feel grief and sadness and you cry, that's normal. That's normal to have those negative feelings at that point. There's nothing wrong with that. Matter of fact, I would be more concerned about you if you didn't feel those negative feelings at that point. So there's a purpose that God put those feelings there for, and we need just simply to look. I say simply, it's easy to say this, but it's not as easy to do it sometimes. But we want to be able to identify those thoughts. What are the thoughts that produce this feeling? Okay? Hope you have that. How many times do I say it? How much do I really believe this? And then what we want to do is we want to learn how to challenge the irrational ideas. Now, if my son dies, that's not an irrational idea. When I say my son's dead, he's long gone, I'll never see him on this earth again, that's not an irrational idea. Those are not irrational emotions that I'd be feeling there. But what we want to do is to make a list of the constructive self-talk that can challenge each of the negative schemas or the negative thoughts that keep coming up in our minds. So what we want to do is we want to weed the garden of your heart. Or as we looked at in our first session when we started this back in September, we want to learn how to guard our heart, for it's the wellspring of life. So we're going to learn how, first we have to learn what the weeds are. Sometimes we don't even know that some of the things we're thinking are not helpful. But so we want to learn what the weeds are, then we want to pull them up. And so we weed the garden of your heart and plant constructive schemas in their place. What happens if you weed your garden and you don't put something in its place? There's another weed's going to come back. So what we want to do is make sure that something constructive, healthy, holy thought is going to be in that hole where you pulled out the weed so that another weed doesn't come. So we pull up the weeds, we plant a good seed in the hole. And this goes back to what we talked about with the empty house principle. You remember we talked about that several times back, the empty house principle, where Jesus said if a demon's kicked out of a person, it goes and wanders over waterless places, and it comes back to the man's house, back to his soul, finds it clean and empty and swept, and so he goes out and gets 7 other demons worse than himself to come in and live in that house. Okay, so here's what we're doing. We're planting in something good. Instead of planting demons or letting demons come back, the bad thoughts, not really saying that we're exorcists or anything here, but we're going to take out those bad thoughts, so we're going to plant some angels in there. We're going to plant some good seeds in there. We're going to plant something we want in there. And in our day-to-day, Paul might have called this logizomai, to logizomai, you remember that word, to think. So we call it cognitive restructuring our thinking. This is not a bad thing. We don't want to be rigid to where we can't change, and we can't change our thinking about things. We want to be open to some things there, that we're not so rigid that we can't look at things in a different way, from a different perspective at least. And we'll come back to that some more. So we want to learn to question, challenge, and defeat the irrational idea. This takes work and practice and perseverance. You don't just do it once and this is done. This is a lifetime thing. You just get better at it. Kind of like gardening. You may really be a poor gardener at first, but the more you get practice, the better you get at it. And so the same thing with this. It's hard to change our set way of thinking. One thing we need to remember is familiarity to our brain seems like safety. The brain is hardwired to think that the familiar is safe. And we might think of it as, the saying, the old Japanese haiku, that better the devil you know than the angel you don't. And so we have to remember, you may have grown up in an abusive family. Matter of fact, I know lots of people that have grown up in abusive families where the mother and the children are just, the daylights was beaten out of them almost daily. And kids grow up and they're certainly showing signs and symptoms of abuse, but they don't see it as abuse. This is normal. This is normal. Similar to the girl who came from a certain place that went to university, and it took her first year in university. Towards the end of the year, girls get together in the dorms and all that, they're talking, and all it dawned on her that everybody's daddy doesn't have sex with them. And of course that led to not only a lot of counseling, it also led to some legal issues with the family also. But that's how that can be so ingrained. We see things from a perspective of how we grew up. Sometimes we don't even know there's a problem until something will trigger that. And I think that if you're a Christian, there are going to be plenty of things. Hopefully you don't have that type of thing or something that severe, but things that God will put in your way or allow in your life that will cause you to kind of shake yourself up a little bit, kind of like Jesus did with the Sermon on the Mount. But this is not mere wishful thinking. It's the logical, rational examination of irrational thinking in order to discard the latter. It is to logizomai, or to do the cognitive restructuring or therapeutic metacognition. Don't you love that word we talked about that time? All right. So now it's going to get fun here. We want to practice weeding the garden of our heart. And so let's just say I'm walking around and I become aware of, I'm feeling something, and first I want to identify what that is. So sometimes I can't. I don't know, what is this I'm feeling? I don't really like it maybe, but what is this I'm feeling? So I go get my feeling wheel. We showed that up there. I look on there and I go around and I say, aha, I'm feeling incredibly sad. And so then I want to go back and do the backtracking and say, what was I thinking about just before I noticed that I was feeling so sad? So I'm trying to identify the weed. And the negative self-talk is something like, I failed a test. Therefore, I'm a loser, I'm worthless, I have no value. Now, I'm giving you some of this that I'm giving you here is stuff that I've had from clients of mine who have attempted suicide. And so here's someone who says that. Now, the only true thing about this negative self-talk here is that they failed the test. That might be the only true thing here. So I failed a test. But what do you do with it? How do you evaluate that? How do you interpret that in regards to your life and your relationships? And if I'm saying, like, I've had clients to say, well, my parents have told me that if I don't make straight A's in junior high school, that I can't go to Harvard. And if I don't go to Harvard, I won't get a good job. If I don't get a good job, I won't have good friends. If I don't have good friends, my life will just be over. So, I'm going to jump off the mountain here. Literally, that is something that has I have heard that kind of thing even from adults. So what I want to do then is in my own soul, in my own heart, I want to be able to guard my heart. I want to be able to cultivate my heart. I want to be able to weed my heart here. So I'm going to pull out that weed by challenging it. And this is how I'm going to do that. Now, I'll put my foot on your chair here, but I'm going to have my knee and I have my hand. And something that we found, we used not to do this, but we found that if you get your body involved, especially with some kind of aversive mild pain or something that kind of wakes you up, I'm going to say, stop! Now what did I do? I said stop at the very same time I hit my leg. Now I'm not trying to bruise my leg or put a blister there. Don't do something like that. I'm going to ask you to do this in just a minute. You're at your chair. And I'm going to say stop. Now what that does to our brain is our brain goes to attention. Okay? It's waiting for other information in that. You ever had that? I mean, just think about it. Anytime you have some kind of unexpected or you're kind of expecting this, but you feel that mild aversive, feeling pain there that's like a slap very fast, we wake up. It's kind of like, attention, give me more information. I need data, tell me what to do. And so what we're going to do, well, before I tell you what we're going to do, if Elijah stands up to preach and you have a thought that you need to pull out, you don't want to go, stop, like that. So what you can do is you can put your hand in your pocket and you can pinch yourself on the thigh. Now, we're not trying to bring a blood blister or anything like that, but you pinch yourself on your thigh, and in your mind you say stop really loud, okay? Another thing some people do, the trick for some that you'll notice this, you ever notice people wearing rubber bands around their wrist? Now, it doesn't mean that they've been in CBT training, cognitive behavioral therapy training, but they might have, because also you can keep that there and pop, and have that little kind of a slap on the wrist with the pop from the rubber band. Anyway, that wakes us up. It stops that negative thought, and also we're waiting for input. And so now it's time to plant the good plant, the positive, constructive, healthy self-talk. And this is just an example. There are a lot of things you could say as healthy self-talk to challenge that particular statement, the negative one. But one thing that I find that you can very often use is to say, stop. That's not true. I'm made in God's image. He loves me. I can do better next time, or I'll study harder, or I'll take a different class. This test was not the whole of my life. It's just a part of my life. Also, Jesus died for me, and that shows God values me whether or not I made an F on the test or not. I have worth that cannot be taken away from me by anything, not even if I sin. My worth doesn't go anywhere. God still loves me and cares for me. And you could say many, many, many other things there. But those are two truths. Christ died for me, and I'm made in God's image. And that'll actually also help you when maybe your self-talk is negative about others. I'd really having a hard time not punching somebody in the mouth here because I'm so angry with them. But stop. I'm going to, they're made in God's image. Christ died for them too, like He died for me. And I wouldn't want to treat God's child that way. I try to visualize also Christ standing behind them or beside them. You ever thought of that? How would you treat people if you could see He is there, but just if you could see Him standing beside that person? I think we might treat each other better than sometimes we do. So here's what we're going to do. I need a volunteer. Who's going to volunteer? All right, come on up here. All right, what's your name? Jonathan. Okay, Jonathan, I'm Bill. Come on up here and have a seat in the chair. All right. I keep forgetting to advance these things. I'm so sorry about that. I'm doing two computers here. let y'all look at that, and we can come back to this if we need to. So Jonathan, right? Okay. What we are going to do is we're going to kind of do this. You see it up there. There's something you're going to read, and then I want you to slap yourself on the leg, and as you say, stop, and then you say the thing over on the right-hand side, which is the constructive, healthy self-talk, okay? All right. Now, I'm also going to ask you to do this in your seat, all right? So what we'll do is we'll come up here. I need this so I can just read these off. All right. Or you can read them off is what we're going to do. Can you see this better? Or you see it? That's better, okay? All right. All right. Okay, so do you understand what we're going to do?
Say it first and then say stop.
There, that's right. So you see the negative self-talk, which is on the left. Can you read that?
Yeah.
Okay. So you read the one there, and then where you see the space, that's at the point where you say stop. Remember, hit your leg at the same time you say stop, and then read the right-hand side. That's going to be the positive thing. What we're doing here, we want to develop a rhythm so this just becomes natural. It's not going to be done just tonight, but as you practice, okay?
One by one.
Yeah, one by one. We're going to do them all.
I don't deserve love. Stop. Then the positive.
Uh-huh.
And then do I say?
No, you've already slapped yourself. Yeah, we're not beating you up here.
I deserve love. I can have love.
All right, now, are y'all doing that in your seat? All right, this is for everybody to do. So he's just our mannequin here. All right. Uh-huh.
I'm a bad person. I'm a good-loving person. I'm terrible. Stop. I am fine as I am. I'm worthless. Stop. I'm worthy. Worthwhile. I'm shameless. Stop. I'm honorable. I'm not lovable. Stop. I'm lovable. I'm not good enough. Stop. I'm deserving. I deserve only bad things. Stop. I deserve good things. I am permanently damaged. I am broken. I'm ugly.
You okay?
Stop. I'm fine. I do not deserve. Stop. I can have. I'm stupid. Stop. I'm intelligent. I'm insignificant. Stop. I'm significant. I am a disappointment. Stop. I am okay just the way I am. I deserve to die. Stop. I deserve to live. I deserve to be miserable. Stop. I deserve to be happy. I'm different. Stop. I'm okay.
Okay. Let's just see. Make sure that I've got this finished now. So, yeah. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Yeah. So, if I can get this back on. So now what we're going to do, now that you know how to do this, now this is not going to solve all problems in your life, but this will help you to keep your mental health healthy and to help you to deal with your moods and your feelings. So we want to look at 10 forms of twisted thinking, or 10 types of weeds in the garden of your heart. Now these next 10 items are not, these are ways we think. They are not the actual self-talk itself, but these are things that when you catch yourself doing this, to say, okay, stop that. That's what Searcy was talking about the other night, and we don't want to do this. So 10 types of weeds in the garden of your heart. Number one, and I take this a lot from, I've adapted this from David Byrne's book, is called the Feeling Good Handbook. All or nothing thinking. That's where we think in either or categories about everything, just about. Well, I just did it. About everything, it's kind of superlative, isn't it? Everything, all. We think in black or white categories. I'm not talking about race here, but we don't see anything in between. With many things in life, Yes, there is a ditch over here on this side. We'll call that the white side. Yes, there's a ditch over here on the left side, the black side. But there's a rainbow in between. You know, there are nuances. There are various degrees. Now, that's not with everything. You either believe in God or not. You either committed adultery or you didn't. Or there is black and white in some things. But in a lot of life, there's a rainbow. We're somewhere in that rainbow. So an example of this would be if a situation falls short of perfection, then it's a total failure. I've had parents come to me with a child, we'll say Johnny, and they throw a report card in my face, and there are 6 A pluses on that report card and 1 F, or sometimes it's even 1 B. And they'll say, this is a bad report card. We want you to fix Johnny. Now, what I'm really thinking is I think I need to fix Mom and Dad first, okay? All right? I don't mean that ugly. I mean, just, but it's, you look there and say, well, maybe a good approach to this would be to say, Johnny, this is fantastic. Look at that. 6 A plus is wonderful. This is absolutely incredible. I'm so happy for you. Now, what could we do to get that F up or that B up? Yeah? Isn't that a lot better? Don't you think that'll fly with Johnny a lot better and be a lot better on his self-esteem and his life? Well, another way of twisted thinking is overgeneralization, and that's using superlatives like always and never. You always wear a checkered shirt here when you come to church on Wednesday night. I never get it right. Now, what just happened in your mind when I said that about your shirt? Almost. But see, what happened in his mind right there is that to some degree he lost what I might be saying. I mean, if this was something we were really making a big deal over. Because what went on is, yes, he's looking at me, he's listening to me with one part of his mind, but another part of his mind had to disengage and go to the data banks here. And he was thinking, now wait a minute, that's not true. I didn't do it last week. Or I bet, you just wait till he shuts up and I'm going to tell him, that, I don't always do that. Okay? So we want to the best we can, to eliminate always and never types of thinking. We want to say something like often. You often wear a checkered shirt to church. Okay? Now, you still might get some defensiveness there, but it's not going to be nearly as much as if I say always or never. So these are things that will help us watch yourself in your thinking and in your relationships with others as well, because this will really get you in trouble when you say always and never. So I used to tell people, never say never. So, there are times maybe to say it, but usually you're going to get off better if you say often, seldom, sometimes, whatever. Then mental filters, where you pick out one single negative detail out of many positives and you focus on the negative exclusively. And this is what happens when we do what Philippians 4:6 says, where Paul says, don't be anxious about anything. You remember we spent some time talking about merimnao, that Greek word that means to pull the kind of pull the pie chart of life apart and then only focus on the negative. So this mental filter is, and a lot of these 10 forms of twisted thinking are going to be very similar to one another, but there is a nuance of difference. Then discounting the positive, where you reject the positive experiences by insisting that they don't count. Sometimes I have couples for marriage counseling where the couple will come in early in the session, early in the course of counseling, and they'll say, they'll describe their marriage, and I'm like, wow, this is a fairy tale marriage. I mean, this is wonderful. People would die to have a marriage like yours, but there's one area that they're not getting along in very well, and it's not adultery or robbing banks or anything like that, but there's one area they just can't seem to agree on. And as you know, if you're married, there are probably going to be more than one area that you don't agree on. Somebody will throw up their hands and just say, this marriage is no good, I want out. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Yeah. You've just taken all of this other that you've said that is so good about your marriage and your life, and you're saying you want to end it because of this one little negative thing. So we don't want to do this. We want to catch ourselves in doing this. And some of these, after tonight, you may find that you're doing them more than you think. Sometimes people get in an audience or something and they're like, oh, I never do that. Never do that. Anyway. So there's discounting the positives. You reject those positive experiences. Then sorry? Did I do what? Oh, I'm so glad you did that. Please feel free to tell me to advance the slides. So we have overgeneralization and never, always and never, and mental filter. And we have discounting the positive is where we are right there. All right. So please do, if I fail to advance the slide, give me a little note there. I don't mind that at all. All right. So the next one is jumping to conclusions, where you interpret things negatively, and notice the italics here, when there is no evidence. All right, that's the qualifying phrase here, when there is no evidence. You jump to conclusions about things, and there are two subpoints, two subtypes of this. One is mind reading, and the other is fortune telling. And what I mean by mind reading is that without checking it out, you arbitrarily conclude that someone is reacting negatively to you. Let's say we're walking out in the parking lot here, you're walking towards me, you say, hey Bill, how's it going? I just keep walking. I don't say anything, I just keep walking, don't even look at you. Now, human nature being what it is, the likelihood is you're going to think something negative. You're going to think, boy, he's a snob, or you're going to think that, he must not like me or something. None of that may be true. Maybe I just heard that my house burned down and my mind's in another place. I'm on Mars someplace. Now, it would be perfectly okay in a situation like that for you to turn right around, tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, I said hello and you didn't say anything. Is everything all right? And then I could say, oh, I'm so sorry. I just, my mind was somewhere else. So here's the thing. We need to check it out before we cop an attitude. This would help in marriages immensely, for many marriages, because we think we know somebody, and we probably do, but check it out before you think that your spouse or someone else is doing something negative. Fortune telling is where you predict that things will turn out badly without evidence. I'm going to go fast here because I've been given the note here. The cheerleader has said it'll be time in a minute. Magnification, the binocular trick, where you exaggerate the importance of your problems and shortcomings and minimize the importance of your assets. Thank you. There we go. All right. So in this one, now an easy example to give for this, many examples, one is easy. When you get jealous of someone, we oftentimes use this magnification trick. Let's say you take your wife to a restaurant and sitting across the way there's some handsome fellow that's making eyes at her and she seems to kind of like that. Now, the first thing I'll say, don't compare yourself to the other guy, but we do a lot of times, so try not to compare yourself. But if you feel yourself getting jealousy, what we tend to do is we tend to compare our weaknesses to the other guy's strengths. Well, he's got blah, 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 So try not to do this one. Try not to compare. Catch yourself when you're doing it. And if you do any comparing, compare your strengths to his strengths, your weaknesses to his weaknesses. And that way it'll be a little bit more fair. Emotional reasoning, where you assume your negative emotions reflect the way things are in reality. Just because you feel something or think something does not make it true. Your feeling is true. You truly feel it. But that does not mean this is what reality is. And this will get us in trouble. When's the worst time to go grocery shopping? When you're hungry. I've done it. I've gotten in trouble with my wife many times. She comes back and I've got the car full of food. So what in the world? I said you ought to get some milk, and you came back with the grocery store. Well, I was hungry. So I've learned that one. I don't go grocery shopping if I'm hungry. But we're not just talking about physical feelings here. My mother one time, one of the good things she told me, she said, Bill, if you have a chance, do not make a major decision on a Blue Monday. You know what a Blue Monday is, don't you? Blue we associate with sadness, and then what's the worst day of the week for a lot of people is Monday. It's the end of the weekend, all that. So when you're really feeling sad, you're down, if you can, try not to make a major decision during those times. Wait till you've buoyed up a little bit at a different time. I would also add to what my mother said. I'd say also try not to make a major decision on a sunny Saturday either. So if you're real high, you're real joyful and happy, you're going to tend to be overly optimistic. Whereas you're sad, you're going to tend to be more pessimistic. So try to wait until your emotions are more on an even keel if possible. And I know you don't always get that choice. Should statements, the should approach to life in cognitive behavioral therapy language, must and have to and got to is a negative is a negative statement. If you keep saying I will not be happy if I must make an A on the test, or I cannot be happy. I'm going to be sad if I don't get that. We want to catch ourselves if we're saying things like must, have to, got to. It's too rigid. You're building yourself into a little box here. Okay? Then labeling, name calling is an extreme form of all or nothing thinking. We attach a negative label on ourselves or others, and remember that you're not. Okay. You're not the same as what you do. Humans exist, but fools, losers, and jerks do not. Jesus said, don't call anybody raka. In other words, don't call anybody ugly names, including yourself. Okay? My time's up. We have some more we'll look at next time. We're going to move on maybe in another session or two into communication, but we want to make sure we get this part really embedded in us. Practice logizomai, gardening your heart.